Having a 10% stake in Apple Inc. sounds like a dream come true for many people looking forward to investing. However, I guess not everyone. One man sat still and watched this fantastic lifetime opportunity go down the drain in 1976 for just US $800. Isn't this intriguing? Meet Ronald Wayne, Apple's third secret co-founder, who sold his 10% of Apple for an incredible US $800 in 1976. And wait, his reason for leaving Apple will shock you. Kindly subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and like this video. Born May 17, 1934, in Cleveland, Ohio, United States, Ronald Wayne is a retired businessman who co-founded the Apple Computer Company, and now Apple Incorporated alongside Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. He was responsible for providing administrative oversight and documentation for new ventures. However, 12 days into his partnership, he sold his 10% share back to Jobs and Wozniak for US $800. A year on, he took a final US $1,500 to forfeit any likely future claims against the newly incorporated Apple, adding up to an incredible US $2,300. Let's dive into a bit of the background story of Ronald Wayne. Wayne schooled in the School of Industrial Art in New York as a technical draftsman. Later, in 1971, he moved to California at 22, where he started his first business, a company selling slot machines. However, the company failed, with Ronald realizing that he had no business and was better off working in engineering. Furthermore, in 1976, Ronald Wayne developed the internal corporate documentation systems at the 3-year-old Atari, where he met co-workers Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. To support them come to terms with one of their typical intense discussions about the plan of computers and the industry's prospect, Wayne invited the two to his home to encourage and urge them on. In the concluding 2-hour discussion about technology and business, Jobs recommended founding a computer company led by him and Wozniak. Those two would each clench a 45% stake, so that Wayne could get a 10% share to work as a tiebreaker in their decisions. How it all started with Ronald Wayne. Ronald Wayne agreed and joined co-founders Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. They were 21 and 25 years to provide the company with adult supervision and regulate mechanical engineering and documentation in exchange for a 10% share of the business. On April 1, 1976, Wayne drew up an agreement detailing each co-founder's responsibilities, making his position at Apple official. He additionally drew the company's first display logo, which was utilized for almost a year before being replaced with the current symbol associated with the company. Why Ronald Wayne decided to leave Apple? His reason will shock you. After being with Apple Computer Company for a few days, Wayne quickly became worried that any debt incurred by the business would fall on him. This was because Steve Jobs had taken a US $15,000 loan to buy supplies to meet Apple's first contract with Bay Area Computer Store, the bike shop, which needed close to 100 computers. However, the bike shop was tagged with failing to pay its debts, so Wayne grew worried that Apple wouldn't be capable of recouping the money. Then both Jobs and Wozniak were young with no money, whereas Wayne had properties, including a building, and stressed that the monetary obligation would fall on his laps if the deal went south. After spending 12 days with Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, Ronald Wayne removed his name from the agreement and sold his shares back to his co-founders for $800. Apple turned out fine, and today it is a multinational technology company specializing in consumer electronics, computer software, and online services. It is by far the most significant information technology company worldwide. Therefore, his decision to leave the startup must have cost him a big deal. Currently, a 10% stock in Apple would be worth more than $95 billion, and that kind of fortune would have made Ronald Wayne one of the wealthiest people globally. When asked if he regrets his decision, Wayne says he doesn't have a tone of regret because he assumes he wouldn't have thrived at Apple. "I would wind up in the documentation department shuffling papers for the next 20 years, he told the Business Insider. According to what Ronald Wayne says, he felt apprehensive, as if standing in the silhouette of intellectual giants. He mumbled, "I was 40, and these kids were in their 20s. They were whirlwinds, It was like carrying a tiger by the tail. If I had kept up with Apple, I perhaps would have wound up the richest man in the cemetery. However, the one thing he does wish undone ensues from his term with Apple. Ronald Wayne held on to his original deal from 1976 for many years. Then in the early 90s, he traded it for $500. I had this Apple contract perching in my filing cabinet, wrapped in dust and cobwebs, and I reckoned, what do I need to hold on to that for? He further asserted. In 2011, the same contract was sold at auction for $1.59 million. Interesting how Ronald Wayne's fate turned around. Shortly after exiting Apple, Ronald rejected all attempts by Jobs to get him to return, remaining at Atari until 1978, when he joined Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory and Tartally an electronics business in Salinas, California. When Apple became more mainstream in December 1980, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak became instant millionaires, and Wayne got on less sufficiently financially. This is a great lesson to learn if you're in any startup. Don't be the Ronald Wayne in that story. Instead, be the Steve who saw the light at the end of the tunnel and thrive till you have achieved that dream. What is your take on Ronald Wayne's ultimate decision to leave Apple in 1976 and now? Let us know in the comments section. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and like our video. Thanks for watching.